Hello, I'm Susan Elliott, news editor of Musical America. Today we're going to be speaking with Annie Burridge. Annie is the General Director and CEO of the Austin Opera Company, and she's also the Vice President of Opera America. The Austin Opera was recently chosen by Bloomberg Philanthropies to be part of what's known as the Digital Accelerator Plan. I wanted to talk to Annie to find out how they were chosen and how they plan to use technology going forward to keep the art form of opera relevant and vital in the 21st century. So thank you for joining us. It's great to see you sort of in person, kind of, sort of. And I wanted to say, congratulations on being part of this cohort, as they call it at Bloomberg.
Since 2018, we've been in pretty consistent contact with Bloomberg. We've been, working with them, reporting to them. And so they have had a great window into what we have been working on here at Austin Opera for quite some time. So when we began packing up our offices on March 13th, like so many cultural organizations, I asked my team, I said, I'd like to get a digital broadcast series up and running within a week. Is that possible? Who knows how to use a video camera? Do we have a video camera? And we did, and we threw together a recital with an incredible local artist, Elena Villalone, which we broadcast a week later, and that was the launch of what we called Live from Indie Terrace. I just felt it was so important, not only to stay in touch with our audience. I will say that the first driver of putting this broadcast series together so quickly was really the scramble to continue employment for our administrators, for our artists, to figure out a way to keep producing something that we would just build on and increase along the way, just to keep everybody delivering on our mission and keep as many artists employed as possible. And so we started. Go ahead.
Let me ask. So when you sort of jumped out of the box, did you have that technical knowledge within the company, and did you have the equipment? In other words, you had not been doing much digital stuff before? Or?
Well, we had enough to get started. One thing that positioned us, I think, really well to just come out of the gate sprinting during the pandemic is about 9 months before the pandemic, we created an innovation council here at Austin Opera. And this was actually the result of another national innovation grant that we had received through Opera America. We put together a council of local tech leaders, immersive tech leaders, to start working with some of our trustees who also have a lot of tech experience, to start envisioning what the future of the operatic experience could be.
This was before the pandemic.
This was before. So right before the pandemic, in February of 2020, we had launched our first real product from this council, which was an augmented reality app that we built around a production of Everest, Joby Talbot and Gene Shear's Everest. And so we had just launched that. It was our first kind of big product launch coming out of the council. And then the pandemic hit. But what was really helpful is that we already had those relationships built with so many tech leaders in town, leaders who ran firms that were expert in videography and film. And so I just got on the phone right away and said, look, I have a feeling we're going to be pivoting to film really quickly. Can you help? And they started by helping us pick out a new video camera. So by week 3 or 4 of the broadcast, we had a better video camera and a better sound system in place.
There are a lot of tech companies based in Austin, no?
There are. It's really what attracted me to Austin Opera. I'm coming up on my 5-year anniversary here.
Wow.
And I, when considering this job, what I think is so excited about Austin, Texas, is it seems to lie at this intersection of innovation and barbecue, right? And I thought, for the city's opera company to become even more of a critical part of civic life here and to become even more of service to our citizens, we really had to drive the entire institution right into that intersection. So, that meant it had a great influence on what we were programming, of course, how we were branding ourselves as a company. But it really had to start with, redefining kind of our values and culture as a company to center.
What about the piece where, I know there's a big focus on diversity, and I know that was sort of part of the thrust of at least what they talked about in these grants. So can you talk a little bit about that and how you're?
Sure. And we'll be announcing this in a few weeks, but I'm happy to give you the advance news here, Susan. We'll be announcing in a few weeks a new programming partnership with the Mexican consulate here in Austin, where we will be featuring 7 programs on site at the Mexican consulate. They will also be available digitally through the new equipment and resources we'll be able to purchase with this grant. It will be curated by a fantastic Mexican-American artist here in Austin, Claudia Chapa. And so that's a huge programming initiative for Austin Opera. It's something we've been working on for some time, and now we have even more resources to invest in the production and dissemination of that program.
Tell me about any other projects that you're thinking about or that you're further developing that this grant is going to help you with.
Well, another important part of our season beyond the big productions we just talked about is our Opera ATX production. Opera ATX is an initiative we launched 3 years ago to take operas to unexpected locations throughout the city for immersive experiences, for experiences that seem very Austin authentic and Austin centric, and just offering another entry point for kind of experience seeking Austinites who maybe haven't yet experienced Austin opera. So our Opera ATX production this year will offer an entirely new way to experience opera, as it will be in virtual reality. This is a partnership with Washington National Opera that they've created an incredible new virtual reality experience based on 2 scenes from Beethoven's Fidelio. And so we will be offering that throughout the season here in Austin at site-specific locations. So this grant will also help us purchase, all the VR headsets that we'll need, as well as some of the installation materials to offer that very new operatic experience, at least to the Austin community.
Yeah.
Opera ATX this past season took place at Blue Starlight Drive-ins. We filmed productions. We formed a partnership with Houston Grand Opera to share some of their productions. And so the first half of our season this past year was offered at drive-in movie theaters across Austin. And so that was our Opera ATX programming for this past season. And so Opera ATX this coming season, we will move, instead of from an interesting theater or drive-in movie theater to the world of virtual reality.
In April, you did an outdoor Tosca, was it?
We did, Susan. We staged a fully staged, fully cast, full set of personnel production of Tosca at Circuit of the Americas, which is the only Formula One racetrack in America. It happens to be here right outside of Austin.
Is it for a Formula One track? Is that what you said?
Formula One racetrack, yes.
That's what I thought you said. Okay,
yeah.
Go on.
Just south of Austin. And they have a wonderful amphitheater there. So they had great infrastructure already in place and just an incredible staff team there who were thrilled at the idea of reopening their venue with Puccini's Tosca. This was a huge undertaking for the company. Of course, we observed the strictest of safety protocols all the way through. So we were rehearsing outside, which certainly increased the safety, but presented a number of challenges. We had the most ridiculous weather during our production period. We're here in Texas, we're used to pretty mild conditions, but we had several days where the temperature dipped below 50 degrees. So we had to bring in, huge heaters so that the orchestra could be on stage with their instruments. We had a storm that tore through a week before opening and tore our entire set to shreds. It picked it up, the back half of the set, and then threw it down onto the front half of the set. So it broke into pieces. So we had to rebuild our set a couple days going into production. And then there was the joy of race cars going around during so many of our rehearsals. And as we were scoping out the venue, it wasn't too distracting, and we thought this would be okay. But of course, because we were outside, we needed to use amplification. And what we hadn't counted on is that those microphones would pick up the sound of the race cars and amplify that sound, so that we had a few rehearsals where the sound was so deafening that we just had to reschedule or move inside or figure out something else to do. But I will say, in the end, we had two performances. We had 3,300 people come, all in awe, to see Tosca. We were also able to live stream it, both live. We had live video feeds as part of the production, but we were also able to broadcast those feeds. And it was just thrilling to be back doing opera at, nearly full force. We were only able to, fit maybe 42 of our musicians on stage. We typically have a larger orchestra, but it's still, that felt like a luxury after, having to do pieces with maybe 8 to 10 musicians for so long. And we had our full chorus, all the principals on stage, and it was quite the epic undertaking.
Yeah. So you had a full chorus too?
We did. The chorus sang in masks, again, to just increase safety.
Yeah.
Did a few scenes from backstage, because we did have we staged the production to have social distance within the staging, and so there were a few scenes where the chorus sang from backstage because we just ran out of real estate, because we had the orchestra, of course, on stage too. They don't have an orchestra pit out at the Circuit of the Americas racetrack.
Not at a racetrack, no. Yeah.
So it required a great deal of improvisation, all hours of the day. But our artists, our musicians, our crew were just, they were just incredible, and they adapted, and everyone was just so happy to be back doing work on a scale that we had been able to do in so many months. That carried the day to a great performance.
During the pandemic, did you have to cut back staff-wise, or are you still pretty much?
We were able to keep every single member of our administrative staff, and that was very important to me. That was very important to the board to be able to do. We had a few months where we did reduce hours, but we were able to keep everyone on full-time. As of January 1st, 2021, everybody was restored 100% in terms of hours and salaries and benefits.
When you arrived in 2016, how big was the season then? How big was the budget then? What is it now?
We were around 4 million, I think, when I arrived. Our budget now is coming closer to 4.5 million, but we do have a great deal more programming, and I think a lot of that is due to the just tremendous resourcefulness of this team here at Austin Opera. When I came, there were a lot of vacant positions, so I was allowed to hire a lot of great professionals and colleagues from across the country, who I'd known from my involvement in Opera America, and just to form a really well-connected team here in Austin. And we were able to figure out how to do more without spending a lot more money. A great example of that is this production of The Revolution of Steve Jobs that's coming up. I love this piece by Mason Bates, and I think he's such a thrilling composer, and I love this opera. But the original production that premiered at Santa Fe, which is brilliant and which I loved, to do that here, it would cost about double of what an average production for us costs. And because it's just very technologically complex.
I bet it is.
Yeah, and it's wonderful. It's a great production. But, talking about this challenge with our colleagues in Atlanta, talking to Tomer Zvolin there, and Kansas City, we thought, what if we came together to build a production that was actually built specifically to tour? Mason Bates, I think he's the second most performed living composer in the United States by orchestras. So he has huge appeal, huge popularity. His music is thrilling. What if we came together to build a production that was built to move? It could not only be performed by opera companies, but could be performed by orchestras. So be performed in theaters that doesn't require an orchestra pit. And so there we set about building a production, and that will premiere here in Austin in January, where the orchestra actually is encompassed on stage. You can only see them at certain moments, but it's a production that could be as easily picked up and produced by symphonies as by other opera companies. And then we thought, well, what if we didn't just, build this clever production concept. What if we lined up our schedules so that we could hire one cast, rehearse it in Austin, and send all those individuals straight on to the other companies to achieve economy of scale and fee there. And so we also were able to line up our schedules to do that. So we were able to get, our number one choice of artist in every role, because we weren't just offering the 3 performances of Austin Opera. We were also offering 3 performances in Austin and 4 or 5 performances in Atlanta and Kansas City, all packaged together as one big deal. And so as a result, I'm doing this production for $1 million less than if I had just rented the original production. We just couldn't figure out how to mount that show here in Austin without these kind of clever collaborative ideas. And it's a show that must be done in Austin. It's about Steve Jobs. We're Apple's second headquarters here. We're called Silicon Hills. And so we've been able to really increase the quantity of what we produce. We've been able to increase the quality, but we haven't had to increase our expense footprint to the same extent. What I think is exciting though, Susan, is this model I think is really representative of where the opera industry as a whole is going. I think that our industry has become so much more collaborative over the past 5 to 6 years. And I think the days of, these ego-driven desires to put your stamp and your logo on all art that is created, that's given way to the realities of, we want to do really good art. We're going to have to find more economical ways to do it. And it's going to require more collaboration, which I really think, as the general director positions continue to turn over at opera companies, we're finding more and more. And it's really exciting. And it takes more time and it's more work, right? To collaboratively cast a show. Right. 2 other general directors, and we all have, kind of casting directors that report to us. It's a little bit of horse trading and bargaining and figuring it out, but it was actually much, much easier than I would have thought. And we all kind of came to the table with one singer we were really dying to have in one role, and we were able to work that out and collaborate on all the rest. And I really think that's the future of the industry, right? Our audiences have higher and higher expectations because they now have unlimited access to the highest quality productions in the world. And so we're just going to have to figure out how to work together to bring that to them live.
So thank you again. Thank you so much.
Sure thing. Thank you, Susan.